All was good in Aggie land. Jimbo Fisher was finalizing a historic class with a win over Alabama in his back pocket. There were no public allegations from Nick Saban, no claims of narcissism about Saban. Yeah, it's been a year since then. To help us make sense of it all, let's welcome in Brian Perroni, the senior staff writer for Gig'em 24/7. It's been a heck of a year, but before we get into a big visit weekend in College Station, we got to talk about Jimbo. If it weren't for the unprecedented buyout number, the hot seat talk would be a lot hotter, but it's not cold by any means. So how has his potential, uncertain future affected the Aggies' recruiting efforts?
So I don't know how much that has affected it because he's got that very long-term contract with no buyout from A&M's side. So it's fully guaranteed, and I just don't think, especially with the economy right now, that Texas A&M is ready to buy him out or could. So I don't think it has affected recruiting as much as just the product on the field. A 5-7 season with the number one recruiting class of all time was not something that kids liked seeing. And I think you saw that with the little bit of a downfall this year on signing day. There were still a couple 5-stars and multiple national top 100 guys, but nothing even close to the 2022 class.
Yeah, Brian, that class was obviously historic, and this past cycle they finished 12th, albeit with a smaller group and a smaller amount of signees. But how important will the success on the field this fall be for Jimbo and for A&M to sustain some of that recruiting success that we've seen from them in recent cycles?
Oh, very much so. You're going to have a lot of people watching Texas A&M this year, a lot more than in previous years, just to see how they do, because while the hot seat isn't necessarily hot right now, it will be if there is another season like 2022. If it's another losing season, then Jimbo, I could see Jimbo and Texas A&M coming to maybe an agreed buyout, or Texas A&M even raising the $70 million or whatever it would be at that time. So this coming class, 2024, we'll be watching very closely on the field. And I think a lot of people are, hesitant on A&M because A&M has been ranked in the top 10 preseason each of the past several years, but are much lower this year heading in the early polls. So expectations aren't as high, but recruits want to see those wins.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a good thing, because last year with all the expectations didn't quite pan out. Meanwhile, A&M fans were bracing, of course, for a lot of potential transfer portal action, not necessarily good action. In total, the Aggies lost over 20 players to the portal. First, how do you evaluate the turnover this year, and really what is Jimbo's overall portal philosophy when it comes to filling out this year's roster?
So the transfer portal has been around for a few years, but heading into this year, Texas A&M has ever only signed 2 players out of it because Jimbo would very much rather go the high school route. Last year, they signed 31 players in that record-breaking class and only brought in 1 transfer in quarterback Max Johnson. So this year, we expected a lot more. We expected that philosophy to change. But so far, Texas A&M only has three transfers in its class, with classes at A&M already having started last week and it's too late to add anybody else for this semester. So unless they add somebody in May, it's going to be 3 guys, and there haven't been any players at linebacker, which is a huge spot of need, and there's only been 1 at wide receiver when they picked up UTEP transfer Tyron Smith this past weekend, and that's also a huge need.
Now, as for this weekend's visit, we'll go to some more positive future news. The biggest name likely there was Brian Wingo, the number 4 receiver in next year's cycle. A&M not alone in wanting his services. Tennessee currently leading the crystal ball predictions. But what impression were the Aggies able to make on him this weekend?
So this is Ryan Wingo's 3rd trip to Texas A&M. He has always been a big fan, along with Tennessee and Arkansas and some of those other schools. He's always liked A&M. He came over the summer. But having Bobby Petrino now on staff as the offensive coordinator gives him a familiar face. Petrino coached his brother at Arkansas and has known the family for years. So I think that really helps A&M a ton, and getting him on campus really helped a ton. And I know he and his family both raved about the trip, and A&M felt things went well too.
Yeah, Brian, LSU commit Xavier Atkins also made it to College Station. He's been committed to the Tigers since last summer. What impression did the Aggies make, and how close could they be to potentially making, some headway there on trying to flip their SEC rival commit?
So that was a huge one that A&M got in town, is Xavier Atkins. He didn't actually technically have an offer until he showed up. this week, but A&M has been recruiting him heavily for some time. He's been to campus since committing to LSU before, and he absolutely loved his trip. He was raving about the coaching staff, about the facilities, about everything. And he's moved from the state of Louisiana to Houston now. So he goes from LSU's backyard to being, about an hour and 15 minutes away from Texas A&M. So that was huge. And he saw another one of his LSU linebacker commits, Maurice Williams, was also at the junior day in the same linebacker room. So it helped him to have some familiar faces there too.
Brian, appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining the show. Hey, keep it locked into Gig 'em 24/7 for all things Aggies all season and all off season long.